Okay, I think we're going to get started. Mark, if you want to go ahead and kick this off and welcome everyone.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to eCRO's first webinar discussing the benefits of strategic staffing, where we explore the world of alternative staffing strategies. I, again, have to apologize for last week. We had some technical difficulties, so I'm really happy that a lot of you were able to sort of reschedule and join us this week. So as Terri said, we will be recording this webinar, and eventually it will be made available online. So in case you have to leave early, hopefully you'll be able to still take advantage of it. We'll also try to leave time at the end for Q&A. You can, we'll try to address all the questions, you know, within the timeline, but if we can't, you can definitely email us. And if you have a question during the presentation, you can use the chat function, and hopefully we can get to it then. So my name is Mark Bercy, and today our guest speaker, Terri Gallagher, is a workforce strategist of Gallagher & Consultants. She's going to be giving us background on the growing alternative staffing market, what's driving the shift from the current full-time employment structure to more flexible talent sourcing options and outlets, as well as the drivers and trends that are fueling this change. So before we start, we can do introductions. My name is Mark Bercy, founder and CEO of eCRO Pharma. In my previous life, I worked in pharma within the drug safety PB functions for 10 years and 3 years as a manager at Area Pharmaceuticals PB Operations Group. I will let Terri sort of go through her little bio.
Terrific. So I am Terri Gallagher. That is me. That's the best photo I think I've ever taken in my entire life. Great photographer. So I've been in the contingent workforce solutions space for 20 years and started my company really to address the changes that we're seeing in the market today and what we're going to discuss a little later in the presentation, you know, primarily around the growth of the gig workforce, the technology evolution, AI in the talent acquisition space, and frankly, a more sophisticated customer in regards to contingent workforce management. So, you know, our approach has been and is to provide solutions for our clients that are based on accommodating these changes today and accommodating the workforce landscape today. So thrilled to be here. So just, you know, briefly going over some of the topics, and some of this may be new for you and it may be common knowledge. So for those of you that already have a, you know, a baseline understanding, bear with us. But there's definitely going to be some great information towards the end of the presentation. So a couple of things. How has the traditional employment model changed? And it's definitely changed. And we're going to talk a little bit about how and why. And then what trends and drivers are changing the way we work. You know, there's a lot of terms around the fourth industrial revolution, gig economy, a lot of terms being tossed around. And we're going to take a little deeper dive on that about, you know, around what's changed. And then a lot of this is really being driven by technology. It is a technology evolution in talent acquisition, and so we're going to talk about how online digital platforms are changing staffing strategies to expand the talent supply chain, and then in particular, you know, what are some emerging trends in pharma and workforce strategy, and they are unique to some other industries, and Mark has some very deep expertise there, and he's going to talk about that. And then what are some alternative models for engaging non-traditional labor and integrating this highly skilled labor into your workforce strategy. So to kind of kick this off, you know, this is a pretty compelling slide. Hi, welcome for those of you that just jumped on. No worries, you're still in the 5-minute buffer zone. We just got started. This is Terri Gallagher.
Thanks.
When we look at traditional labor,
sorry, I'm not able to see the screen. I tried joining using the link that https global meeting go to meetings.com. I'm not able to view your desktop or your presentation.
Are you running is there like a run feature that tells you to run, or asking you to kind of enabled.
No, it is saying
like
the
that.
page you requested could not be found. You may have used a link that is inactive or typed a web address incorrectly.
Can you tell Mark your name and he'll forward you the most recent? You may be using the older version and he'll send that to you.
Sure. Okay. Thanks.
And Mark, you can, is this, I think you can kind of see who just logged on. If you could take care of that gentleman and get him a link.
Sure.
So Mark, look at I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just said, Mark, this is Mohammed Khan. So if you can just send me a mail, my email ID is najee.25@aol.com.
Okay, I'll send it out to you now.
Perfect, thank you. So when we look at non-traditional labor, there's a lot of changes happening in the way that we work. And before we talk about technology changes and how the talent supply chain is changing, we really have to talk about what's driving those changes. You know, the way we work has changed. And despite what you see in headlines regarding the Uber lawsuits and lack of benefits and protections for this workforce, as you can see here on the right, it's growing. You know, the spend for leveraging this talent is growing. And for companies, this non-traditional labor provides an income stream, or for the non-traditional labor provides an income stream outside of traditional employment. So despite some of the concerns that have been voiced, this workforce continues to grow. And we're going to tell you a little bit about why when we look at some of these trends. So one of the most compelling things is that the employee relationship is really changing. So those days where, you know, you went to work for a big iconic company and you stayed with them for life and got the gold watch is really, it's really kind of going by the wayside. When you look at today, where the average worker is as far as who they work for and how long they work, most workers as of today change jobs every 4 to 6 years, and they're going to work for more than 11 companies in their career. Then you bring in the millennials into the workforce and who work very differently. You know, they want interesting projects. They like to move around. They're going to be 50% of our workforce by the year 2020 and 75% by the year 2030. So they really are driving how we work, and many of them are very comfortable with gig work, working on multiple projects. The side hustle is a common word. So some of what's being driven is being driven by the millennials, and then consequently you have baby boomers who are retiring from the marketplace, and the millennials will be the biggest part of our workforce in just a couple of years. So when you look at what is our workforce going to look like in 2020, per Staffing Industry Analysts report, and they do a lot of reporting around, you know, what's going on with the current workforce landscape. They report that 47% of the workforce is going to be contingent by the end of 2017, and that's up 34% in 2015. And so these are very compelling statistics, but what's really compelling is that the majority of these workers choose to be here. The top 3 reasons that these workers choose to be an independent or a gig worker is flexibility of hours, more control over their career, and they can pursue their passion in that order. And I like to do a little bit of anecdotal surveying myself. I ride in Uber a lot, you know, just in between client meetings and different cities that I travel in. And it's interesting, I spoke to a driver who to me was kind of the typical profile. And I said, you know, are you really making money at this? I mean, can you support yourself driving an Uber? And she said that she is. She says, you know, I'm not living large. She says, but I'm able to get my kids sneakers for school. She said that what I like about Uber is it provided an income stream where I didn't have one before. She had multiple resumes out to different companies. So this allows her to fill in the gap. And so I thought that that was a very compelling story around why people are choosing to work in this space and the opportunities that it affords that wasn't there, you know, 3, 4, 5 years ago. So Mark, you might want to jump in on this one, but, you know, what is the gig economy? You know, millennials, we talked about this earlier, 91% plan to stay less than 3 years in a role. 42 million U.S. workers today are 1099. 65 million are projected to increase. It's projected to increase to 65 million by the year 2020. Roughly a third of the workforce has a second job, and 1 in 3 millennials freelance. Mark, and I think you had some thoughts to add here as well.
Yeah. I just wanted to mention that one result of the growth of the gig economy has sort of been the sharing of new ideas that comes from new people who make an impact based on their experience. Maybe they can see things in a different way or have experienced similar issues, and the innovation that can result from that should be highlighted. And you mentioned the prevalence of millennials in the workforce being a huge driver of this trend, since they want sort of a different thing for their career. They're looking more for a work-life balance, working smart, and sort of unavoiding unnecessary steps that can be avoided, especially with technology, like with the just commuting into work every day, and just having a more flexible lifestyle. That change in mindset, along with more and more experienced workers retiring at an earlier age, is resulting in a serious supply crisis when it comes to finding and retaining qualified, experienced talent. And I've noticed that companies who aren't understanding this trend and aren't pivoting it to the changing landscape and not embracing the alternative staffing strategies that are available with, like, the gig economy, for example, are finding themselves not positioned for long-term success. So those are just a few points I wanted to make.
Well, it's interesting because you talk about the supply crisis, and one of the biggest things is everyone is mobile, right? So a lot of the millennials use mobile capabilities, a lot of talent acquisition technology, and we're going to talk a little bit about that ecosystem in a minute. It's critical that they be mobile enabled. A lot of these younger workers don't even work on a laptop, or they don't have a laptop. They do everything on their phone. I can give you an example. I have, for Gallagher and Consultants, I actually hired my 17-year-old niece to manage our Instagram account because they're so savvy with social media and all the different options. So mobile capability is really important when looking at the gig workforce. And when you look at what is changing and what's driving some of this fourth industrial revolution, a lot of it is really technology. It's shaping the way that we work. And there's a few different concepts here that's kind of creating that perfect storm, that's creating a different model for how and why and where we work. So you've got internet users surpassing 3 billion. A number of smartphones will surpass 2 billion. We talked about what's going on with millennials and how many workers are 1099. But what's also accommodating this is platform companies and on-demand and digital technology, talent acquisition technology that is rising up to meet these changes. And right now there's 176 platform companies worth 4.3 trillion that do nothing but connect you using technology to this workforce in a very immediate way and providing supply chain options for you to help with that supply side crisis and basically widening the net to access talent. And particularly in pharma, there's a lot of challenges going on with getting talent and the specialized talent. We're going to talk about that in a minute. 63% of these platform companies were founded outside the U.S. So when you look at, how this talent is being used and how we work, I bet you at least a fourth of you on the phone today are probably calling from a home office. You're not calling from a brick and mortar office, or you're calling from a co-working space. So it's really changed the way that we work, and it's here today. It's not something that's going to be happening, in a couple of years. So I'm going to hand this over to Mark, but there's definitely some very interesting pharma trends that kind of tie into this that all of you on the phone, I think, would be very interested to learn about. So Mark, hand it back to you.
Thanks, Terri. Actually, could you go back to the mobile slide? I just wanted to sort of add a couple points. Just, want everyone to better understand our use of the term mobile. It's not necessarily having a cell phone, but just the fact that any type of good or goods or services can be accessed immediately. When they want it, someone can be accessed immediately. It's just the fact that the immediate gratification and like the on-demand culture that we're in currently, just with the ability to access knowledge and people, and our growing dependence on mobile technology is what's driving people and businesses in this direction. Traditional staffing organizations are largely asleep at the wheel. I've noticed when it comes to the changing times, and they're not embracing how varied and flexible and powerful alternative staffing can be to a company's operations. You know, they're using LinkedIn and email, obviously, but they're not really embracing the full power of online and digital technologies. So yeah, I just wanted to make that quick point. So in terms of technology, we at eCRO, we're currently at the stage of really building out our network, but we want to embrace technology in a lot of different ways. Just with assisting members, for example, with possibly producing video content, sort of showing off their expertise in particular areas of pharma. It's great in separating yourself from the rest of the competition, and it helps make an online footprint for you that can last for years into the future. And we want to embrace online video capabilities for oversight purposes, collaboration with others and with clients for projects and other works. And we also want to help with training and sort of learning programs using mobile technology, since that is also a growing trend as well. At the end of the day, we really want to empower the professionals and the consultants that are affiliated with us, because their success is our success. And I feel like finally the ball is sort of back in our court in terms of having power over our careers as opposed to the companies, because now the term temp no longer means someone who can't find a permanent job. It's people who are experts in their field, and their expertise can basically sell itself. So yeah, I just wanted to make that quick point. To go into the pharma-specific workforce trends, just to set the stage and give everyone some background on how strategically organizations are starting to be run. There are many factors like limited supply, which we discussed, for specialized manpower, especially earlier retirement age, and definitely the influx of millennials bringing new creative ideas into the marketplace. So now businesses are trying to shift towards strategy as opposed to fulfilling operations. Typically, operations are outsourced to specialized vendors, and those that can contribute strategically, are usually brought in and employed full-time by the company. And those who don't have their foot in the door when it comes to pharma, with their prior experience, can prove their worth during their temporary stint, perhaps. Because proving to a company you work as a temp so much so that they want to bring you on full-time is not only a great feeling, but it speaks to the compatibility and the mutual understanding of a common goal and endpoint. Currently very few companies in pharma and biotech have fully integrated alternative staffing methods, intertwined into their business strategy. But there is one example that I recently read about, Nimbus Therapeutics, where the CFO, Jeb Kuiper, incorporates contingent workers into everyday operations, and sort of like a high-level oversight of all of the external vendors or freelancers or temp workers. But we can get into that more when we start discussing leveraging flexible workforce strategies. Hiring continues to be a critical problem for pharma companies, especially within those niche medical, clinical, drug safety, maybe regulatory roles, where experience and specialized knowledge, or even an ACP license is needed. Companies in biotech and pharma do use contractors from staffing agencies, but largely those roles are temp to perm, and they don't include training. And the strategy on their end is to retain those that fit well within the team and the culture, but due to the limited supply of talent, companies more often than not convert those temps to permanent employees regardless. And I also just wanted to mention, I guess some of the missing components to today's corporate recruiting strategy. largely, they are not as budget-minded as they could be, where they could, maintain a lean internal team that manages its staff and its, external entities. The effective training is also an issue that I have noticed within pharma, just because time and money is lost with training on new hires. And I believe I read that it's in the tens of thousands when it comes to the money and the time that's lost. And it usually takes about 3 to 4 months to get somebody fully up to speed. So, effective training is very important, just so you can sort of position your new hire for success, but it sort of comes at a cost internally. And lastly, just a flexible operation strategy to handle the spikes and valleys in work, any type of ad hoc projects or unforeseen staffing changes. Could you go to the next slide, please?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm there. Oh, after this one?
Yes. Oh.
This slide.
Okay, sorry about that. So I had another one in there. So I just wanted to quickly speak to, I guess, the evolving workforce composition. SIA, Staffing Industry Analysts, determined that companies that are very process-based are prime for utilizing strategic staffing options, as opposed to your typical full-time employees, since most pharma professionals definitely understand the fundamentals of the job and just need guidance with certain company-specific practices. Another interesting note regarding the workforce composition, there's a shrinking average employee tenure. I think it might be at about 9 to 12 months. And as a result, there is more use of an integrated globalized workforce that use, both employee types, both temps and permanent employees. And another driver of this is the rising healthcare benefits costs to the companies, which is leading to increased use of alternative staffing methods. Yeah, that is about it. So could you go to the next slide, please?
Yes, so we're on online staffing platforms, freelance management systems. Do you want me to take this one?
Sure.
So, as Mark talked about, there's a lot of different trends in pharma, and there's certainly a lot of opportunity from the training perspective in leveraging this contingent workforce. And when we talk about technology, there's a lot of different ways to access independent contractors, this gig workforce, these highly skilled pharma technicians and talent that you can only find in some of these communities who are willingly choosing to work as an independent consultant. So now you look at the technology piece, how do you connect to this talent? And there's a few different types, and this can be a little confusing, and that's why we kind of spelled them out. So the online staffing platform is, basically allowing those independent consultants to connect with you. They're kind of like matchmaking platforms, Upwork, Mark's company, eCRO Pharma, Catalent. They are selling those services to connect you directly to that talent. And they'll also have sometimes a human element that will enable you to work through the system and find the right talent. Freelancer management systems are a bit more direct. So they basically allow you to self-manage these engagements. The workers can go on, they can put their information on there. You can go on and select these independent workers. Some of them also provide some risk mitigation components if you want to payroll them or you're concerned about co-employment. And then talent clouds are lastly where organizations store talent that they've identified or worked with previously. And I can tell you this is really taking off with companies. They call it direct sourcing talent cloud, where maybe you have a former retiree or someone that showed up, at your site and you'd love to employ them, but you don't have open headcount and you'd still like to retain them. You can bring them in through a payrolling partner. And these clouds or these talent clouds sit on technology platforms with profiles that you can access at any time. So basically you've done the sourcing and vetting and you just need a place to house them. So when we look at, we talked about the explosion of technology, right, and the explosion of options. This is really a great slide to talk about what that explosion looks like. And there's quite a bit of players in the space. So to kind of take you through, on the left is your traditional staffing partners. They provide primarily W-2 employees. You can see down here, the W-2 employee percentage is 30 to 65%. They do all the vetting, curating of the talent, very high touch. They usually have a lower percentage of independent contractors. And then here in the middle, you have what we talked about, is that human cloud, or talent pools, also known as direct sourcing, where you have kind of this repository of talent that you can vet and source yourself, often used by recruiters. You see some of the usual suspects here with LinkedIn and Career Builder. And then these also have technology platforms that will store profiles of this talent that you found on your own, and then you can access immediately to engage. So the advantages here are less layers than, say, your traditional staffing. It's usually lower cost, because anytime you've got less layers and less hands in the buying cycle, there's a lower cost component, because the burden of recruitment and vetting is on the enterprise or the recruiter. And you can see here the percentage of W-2 employees is 18 to 25%, independent contractor roughly 3 to 6%. And then on the right, you've got the online staffing platforms that we talked about that provide that on-demand talent. You can see that this is where eCRO fits in, eCRO Pharma, and getting access to that remote talent like graphic artists, CAD drawers, pharmacists, medical tech. So this is where a lot of that type of talent is housed, as well as, TaskRabbit, if you want, Windows, if you want pictures hung. So this is kind of where that workforce can fit in this ecosystem. And then up top, you have the technology that's enabling connecting you to the talent. So on the left, you've got the ATS, the applicant tracking, the HRIS systems that basically house your permanent talent. One of the things we're finding with our clients is that they want to integrate their temporary workforce or their gig workers or independent workers into these platforms. We're seeing that particularly with Workday and SuccessFactors quite a bit, where they want to be able to integrate that talent. And so there's a whole other technology solution that's being looked at that can bring these systems together, like VMS. So VMS, vendor management systems, these are the systems that really manage the procurement piece for your contingent workforce. Requisition creation, providing visibility, approvals, consolidated invoicing, kind of that onboarding to offboarding piece, often used in managed services programs. You'll see the VMS. And then on the right is that independent consultant compliance and payrolling piece. So for those that want to mitigate that risk, or that want to find a place where they've got that housed talent and want the additional layers of protection around, making sure taxes are taking out, maybe payrolling them through a supplier, you've now got technology enabling that. So the intent is that it really is about an ecosystem, and the choices can be overwhelming. The $65,000 question is, what is the right mix? Where do I go when? And so a big part of that is understanding your business and knowing what type of talent you need. An online remote workforce, an online remote resource may not be ideal for a project where you've got, you need a project manager, you've got several roles, you need very high touch. You're also not going to find a lead machinist here, right, in work market when you need somebody to, in manufacturing to show up at a plant site. So it's really understanding the business. But the point here is that this is a way to expand your talent supply chain and bring in talent that only sits in these communities. So Mark, I'll kick it back to you.
Great. Thanks. So yeah, right now I will just, go into eCRO and some background on it. eCRO Pharma is a U.S.-based clinically focused strategic resourcing organization that proactively sources top talent within pharma and biotech to join our professional online network to meet, network, share ideas, and hopefully grow professionally. eCRO also matches network professionals, both W-2 workers and 1099 independent consultants looking for permanent and temporary opportunities, both on-site and remote, to hopefully satisfy client companies that seek operational staffing in consulting services. With this, we really want to address three prevalent issues that I've noticed with the corporate recruitment process today, and the core trends driving them. So there's obviously the limited supply chain, which is addressed by our clients understanding that limiting their resourcing options only to those in their vicinity, especially with the onset of online technologies, is not in their best interest. We also want to cut down on the drawn-out timelines for hiring, which we address with our access to our qualified network professionals across the country, as well as a lot of automated practices, electronic forms, proactive reference checks, just trying to compress the placement timelines that currently exist with your typical staffing organizations. And lastly, we've mentioned the younger workforce and the millennial sort of worker profile, which includes working smarter and more efficiently, and really trying to attain that balanced, flexible lifestyle, and just experiencing different types of work, and sort of having the ball in their court. And it further drives the gig economy and the contingent work lifestyle, where you can experience a lot of different work situations, projects, cultures, and almost have that sort of journeyman or journeywoman lifestyle. And we also want to partner with industry consultants. I feel like there's so many out there, especially as a manager at my last job. We would look for consultants, and there's just so many out there that you don't really know who the right person is. And from their perspective, I'm sure setting yourself apart from the rest is a bit of an uphill battle. Companies out there are definitely looking for consultants when there needs to be process improvements internally. Perhaps they need guidance and support during some trying times, or even an upcoming regulatory inspection where they need sort of guidance down that road. And if companies can go to sort of one destination to find this expertise in all its forms, I think there's tremendous value with that. As a manager, I noticed glaring inefficiencies and oftentimes, incompatible matches and underwhelming candidates in the hiring process. And that difficulties, with hiring sort of stuck with me through my time there. And lots of the research and educating, and, the self-education on the world of staffing, the one commonality I was noticing, to my surprise, was that staffing is just changing in every facet, from companies' inability to find and retain qualified talent in their respective areas, as well as professionals having many more options when it comes to making a living. The problem is definitely hitting pharma and biotech as we speak. However, professionals in this industry, I've noticed, are still of the mindset that you want a full-time job, and I believe they aren't aware of all the options that may fit their lives or their careers a little bit better. So I like to also educate the professionals within the within the network, as well as anybody who is considering any type of change with their careers. Terri, could you go to the next slide? Oh, you already did. You're good. So basically, the eCRO philosophy, we do not want to be another recruiter or recruiting agency. We want to be a partner and a trusted sort of destination when it comes to finding qualified talent that is sort of pre-vetted. We really want to establish a professional network that's also a community that really develops, invests in, and empowers the professionals. I understand that our collective wealth as we grow will be our biggest asset. We definitely want to be the best industry matchmaker, so the placements are performed faster and the matches are more compatible than with your typical staffing companies. We want to collaborate with our network clients and professionals to work effectively and sort of gain the same thing across the board, and provide on-demand assistance since challenges can really pop up at any time. And hopefully we could sort of be a fallback plan when it comes to handling unforeseen circumstances. Developing that trust, especially during trying times, is definitely important to our overall goal. Could you go to the next slide, please?
Sure.
Thanks. So, as I see it, what's next for the company? As of now, we are currently building the network, so we have some type of standing. We really want to get to a point where our collective wealth of knowledge is very diverse. And once we get to that point, I would love for us to get to a point where we can actually have sort of like an emergency service for any type of time critical resourcing needs for both staff and consultants. We'd love to assist members with creating valuable online content to better market themselves in this online age, and just sort of confirm their areas of expertise, to the industry. We want to continue to educate pharma and healthcare professionals and companies to the merits of contingent staffing, because ultimately it will be the future of corporate staffing. We would love to get into referral bonuses. We really want to grow our network and just diversify our areas of expertise. And lastly, getting feedback from network members to improve our processes and our standing in the industry. We aren't, we're not really limiting ourselves in any way when it comes to, what can be accomplished with having, one network that can essentially address most needs within the industry. So, we're just trying to keep an open mind and see what works logistically, and hopefully we can provide some value and some relief to industry players.
Great. Thank you, Mark. That was a great overview of pharma, and definitely I think very educational for those of us that are not in the industry. I think the majority of the people on the phone are. So, the big thing is to kind of bring this together is, there are benefits to leveraging a workforce strategy, right? So that integration of flexible talent into your total workforce strategy. And it's not just about saving money or not having to pay employee benefits. It's about tapping into the workforce landscape has changed. And workers are willingly choosing this path to move away from the gold watch, and organizations consequently then benefit from widening that net for that talent supply chain. So what Mark's trying to do with eCRO and these digital platforms is provide you that access enabled by technology to integrate this workforce into your total talent strategy. And it's a way to mitigate the talent war, and it's happening globally too. So expanding that talent supply chain, looking at multiple avenues for talent, freelancers, contingent, using direct sourcing, retirees, and having that kind of fluid workforce. And that's a common term that Deloitte and a lot of the big consulting firms are using, but it's being able to have multiple talent supply chain streams to build that ideal pharma workforce that you need to elevate your company and to support your clients. And a big part of that is, standardized processes to mitigate the risk. So managing the regulatory requirements, tax, risk, employment law, particularly for those of you that are multinational companies and those of you that use a lot of independent consultants, just understanding what those risks are. For those of you using talent clouds and direct sourcing, making sure that the professional employment organizations you use to support and manage that talent, or employment of record organizations that you use to payroll that talent, that they are doing, what they need to do around the requirements, tax, risk, employment law. So this is something that Gallagher and consultants came up with. I come from the MSP VMS space, MSP meaning managed services provider for staffing companies. And for 20 years, I worked in that space. And when I started this company 2.5 months ago, I spent the first 6 months interviewing previous clients and asking, what would you like to have seen from your total talent strategy or your contingent workforce strategy provider. And the things that I heard is they want a more proactive approach, more strategic thinking, but still ensure that, you know, the tactical side of the onboarding and offboarding was covered. And so we came up with this ecosystem model. And ecosystem is really used a lot, but it's really surprisingly getting back to a very decentralized approach around managing your talent supply chain. And it's really looking at, you know, bringing in just the components that you need to manage your workforce, and then really kind of eliminating some of those things that you don't. So the biggest difference here is that it's vendor neutral, and it has a very technology-centric approach. So when we talked about that talent supply chain earlier, the VMS, the ATS, the digital platform, you really need kind of that ecosystem set up. And then you need the talent supply chain, right? So the eCROs, you know, the staffing partners, the direct sourcing and on-demand, that's also part of this workforce. And then you need somebody to kind of manage that piece. So you've got your internal program here, this PMO. This could be an internal PMO. A lot of companies are managing their contingent and IC management programs internally, or it can be outsourced. And then your worker lifecycle management. So your contractors, your gig, your on-demand workers, that kind of onboarding to offboarding that is managed and enabled by the technology sits here. The big piece of this is the data and analytics and the consultative expertise. So having true business analysts, having true technology support that will tell you what is the next thing you need to do with your vendor management system, or when do you need to bring in an applicant tracking system as part of your total talent management strategy. You know, what's going to make sense for you from a business standpoint, and then providing true business analytics. Not just giving you headcount reports and quarterly reviews, but telling you, you know, looking across the spectrum of all of your technology platforms and what's going on with eCRO and what is the next step you need to make from a total workforce strategy. Do you have the right mix? Are you using consultants where really you could be working with contractors? So the intent here is to have a very kind of loosely coupled components of your total talent management strategy, but still holding it together with this PMO and keeping it very kind of simple and straightforward to leverage. And then being able to use this to integrate your non-traditional labor into your total management strategy. So I think, Mark, I'll let you kind of handle some of these takeaways if you want to address these, and we'll open it up for questions.
Sure. So I just wanted to mention one quick point regarding leveraging the flexible workforce strategy. I had mentioned earlier a company, Nimbus Therapeutics, where their strategy incorporated contingent workers into everyday operations and outwardly declared that contingent workers are integral to their strategy and where they want to be long term. And the primary reason Nimbus said that they hire gig workers is not to cut costs, but to increase their business flexibility and agility, and sort of as a try before you buy, where they can access hard to find, highly skilled talent for immediate use and have that potential for long-term employment if it fits into their long-term strategy. And you know, these are growing opportunities that will exist on both ends of pharma with industry as well as the professionals. And you know, we want to be there first to sort of provide that resourcing, you know, with minimal risk. I believe the term that they used was virtual biotech, where they actually have a group of 15 to 20 industry experts that are employed full-time to do research and manage projects, and any of the external freelance teams or professionals, and it, you know, limits their upfront costs and the long-term commitment, so they can sort of shed the inefficient expenditures that exist with your typical full-time employment structure. Yeah, they mention a few other you know, huge advantages that they love. I can actually post that to the website if anybody's interested. But yeah, I just, you know, really want to sort of extend the network and invite to, you know, all professionals and just really take advantage of that, you know, vast amount of knowledge. And you had mentioned retirees. Also, there are people that are on maternity leave, stay-at-home parents that have a lot of expertise within pharma, and they can't really use it just because there isn't really a formal, structured way of doing it. So I definitely want to extend the invite to all professionals with experience within pharma, just because it's really going to open up the opportunities for all players involved. So we can go into some of the takeaways. The workforce landscape has changed. As we can all see, there is a significant need for organizations to look at, integrating alternative staffing strategies into their talent attraction, strategies. Technology evolution is definitely enabling organizations to connect directly to talent. There are many less layers and multiple technology platforms to choose from. Risk mitigation is very important, deliverable with these solutions. The risk for non-compliance must be considered, but can definitely be mitigated with some of these solutions. An ecosystem approach in terms of talent strategies being leveraged, leveraging the right expertise, technology, and solutions is key to today's modern workforce strategies. It expands your talent supply chain options and definitely ensures growth and competitiveness as an organization. And lastly, right now it really is a workers' job market due to the limited supply of talent, earlier retirement age and millennials focusing on a more balanced and diverse lifestyle. I believe they said that by 2020, 50% of the workforce would be millennials. So a lot of the career options out there are sort of being shifted into what they would prefer in terms of making a living. So I think that's a very important takeaway from all this.
Thank you, Mark. So I think we'll open it up to questions if anyone has any questions, or if anything didn't make sense or you want further clarification. I don't see anything in the chat yet.
Hi, this is Michelle Schwab. I actually have an interesting question that kind of dovetails into what Mark kind of mentioned earlier in the presentation. Hi. I know I'm totally on board with this, and this is something that I've been saying for quite a long time with everything that both of you have said. And so this is right up my alley as I start to look at retirement in the next 10 years. And this is something that I would like to think about doing as a part-time job in retirement. But right now, one of the things that I know you're talking about alternative opportunities that I'm kind of running into a roadblock with is employers are starting to look at the alternative of remote as an opportunity to look for talent with the limiting supply chain that you were mentioning. One of the things that I'm running into is the alternate hours where somebody might be available, say, in the evenings and on the weekends because they're actually working another job during the day, and that happens to be a real roadblock, as well as the fact that they are working another job during the day. Well, when you mentioned the fact that you would be working with a CRO and that you have signed a confidentiality agreement working for a CRO in which you don't talk about one CRO's business with another CRO's business with another sponsor with another sponsor with another sponsor, by the mere fact that you're working for a CRO, working then outside of hours, you would, by the mere fact that you would not even speak about that company's information working outside of hours. So I don't know if you've had that situation, either one of you, and if that's something that's even been brought up as an alternative. I kind of run into a roadblock with that to maybe pick up extra hours working for a client. That seems to be something that I'm having a problem with.
Interesting.
Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, it does, and you know, some companies require that you complete a non-compete also, which sort of prohibits you from doing something similar to what you're being brought on to do at that company. So I've noticed that that's been a bit of a barrier when it comes to sort of logistically making something like this work. But we're trying to sort of work through some of those just because it's not across the board. When it comes to your sort of status, your employment status as a temp, you won't, more likely than not, you would not have to complete a non-compete. So you would be open to having different roles, sort of based on your preferred work schedule. If you are a permanent employee, it does get a little bit tougher trying to have another job where you're making supplemental income, but you're using the same skills that you would be at your current place of employment. So yeah, that's definitely a roadblock that I'm sure other people have run into. But I think things are changing just from the company's perspective. It's very hard to find good qualified talent. So I think a lot of those sort of practices will be going by the wayside, and hopefully it'll be a lot easier to sort of take advantage of different opportunities that aren't as sort of singular as one full-time employer. Unfortunately, I wish I had a better answer for you.
Okay.
Terri, do you have anything to add?
No, I think you covered it. I think a lot of it is just looking at the opportunity, right? In my company, I'm pretty much 24/7 because I have international clients. So it depends on time zones. I mean, there's opportunities to work remotely and to work for clients that may, be in another time zone. So I think that kind of the 9 to 5 is a bit on its way out too, the way people work. So to Mark's point, there's options. I think you just got to look at what matches your skill set and, how many different clients you're working with and what makes sense ethically.
Right.
Good question. Great question. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Just to, as you're talking with clients, if they have things that are urgent and emergent, just to kind of help them to keep their mindset open. So thank you.
That's a great ad. We will. Thank you. You're right. Any other questions? Okay, I think we're good. This has been recorded. I want to thank everyone for your time. It's been an honor and a privilege to speak with you. Mark, if you want to wrap it up and
yes, thank you for joining. We will be making this available hopefully by early next week. So if you miss anything or you want to revisit any of the content,